Welcome back to Rapture Tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and get ready for another story you won't forget. Let's dive back to the story. Eleanor Whitmore grew up in a modest terrace house on the edge of a quiet English town, a place where everyone knew everyone, and secrets rarely survived a week. Her parents, Thomas and Helen Whitmore, were gentle people. Her father a night shift security guard who loved old detective novels. Her mother a seamstress who dreamed of opening a small tailoring shop. Eleanor was their only child, cherished and protected, raised on discipline, affection, and hope. She was bright at school, known for her curiosity and her habit of fixing broken things instead of throwing them away. From an early age, Eleanor dreamed of becoming an engineer, fascinated by how machines and systems worked. She spent afternoons dismantling radios with her father and sketching designs in old notebooks. Her life felt simple but secure, wrapped in routines and quiet happiness. She never imagined that everything she knew could vanish in a single night. The night her parents died was cold and unforgiving. Returning from work, they were caught in a violent robbery gone wrong, a tragedy that shook the town and made headlines for a week before fading into obscurity. Eleanor, barely 17, stood alone at their graves, her future collapsing with the soil that covered them. The house was sold to settle debts, and she was sent to live with relatives she barely knew. Her Aunt Clara and Uncle Peter Whitmore took her in reluctantly, treating her more like an obligation than family. Their home was rigid, filled with rules but no warmth. Eleanor was expected to work, clean, and stay silent. Any mention of her dreams was dismissed as childish fantasy. Slowly, grief hardened into loneliness, and loneliness into quiet endurance. School became Eleanor's only refuge. She studied relentlessly, determined to escape the life she was being forced into. Her teachers noticed her brilliance, but without parental support or financial stability, her future remained uncertain. When money grew tight, her relatives pressured her to leave school and contribute more to the household. Eventually, Eleanor left on her own terms, taking small jobs, cleaning, deliveries, manual labor, anything that paid. She rented a cramped room and survived day by day, clinging to independence even as exhaustion crept in. Despite everything, she refused to surrender her dignity. One early morning, while walking to a temporary job at a construction site, Eleanor took a shortcut through an abandoned area. There, her life took a dark and irreversible turn. She was attacked, left injured and terrified, and when she reported it, she was met with suspicion instead of compassion. The investigation went nowhere, and the whispers began. Weeks later, the truth revealed itself in the most brutal way. She was pregnant. Fear overwhelmed her, but worse was the reaction of those around her. Former acquaintances turned away. Employers dismissed her, and even her relatives refused contact. Eleanor became invisible, surviving on scraps and determination as her body weakened and her belly grew heavier. As months passed, hunger and stress took their toll. Eleanor drifted between shelters, often sleeping outside when space ran out. Her health deteriorated, but she pressed on, speaking softly to the unborn child who had become her only reason to live. Every step felt heavier, every breath more painful. Unbeknownst to her, another man was walking a very different path. Alexander Kingsley, one of the wealthiest businessmen in the country, had grown disillusioned with privilege. Haunted by the loss of his first child years earlier, he chose to live anonymously among the forgotten, believing empathy could not be learned from boardrooms. Disguised as a homeless beggar, he spent his days observing humanity at its rawest. Alexander slept in shelters, begged for coins, and listened to stories no one else cared to hear. Many dismissed him as mad, others pitied him, but he remained resolute. His wife, Margaret Kingsley, supported him from afar, trusting his mission even when it frightened her. On a crowded city street, fate finally intervened. Eleanor, weak, dizzy, and starving, stumbled through the noise and judgment of passers-by. Her vision blurred, and the weight became too much. She collapsed forward, straight into the arms of the man everyone ignored, the beggar on the pavement. People laughed, shouted accusations, and assumed the worst. But Alexander caught her, steady and calm, his eyes sharp with concern. As Eleanor lost consciousness, unaware of who held her, a chain of events began that would reshape both their lives forever. Alexander moved with urgency the moment Eleanor collapsed in his arms. The mocking voices around him faded as he laid her gently on the pavement, checking her pulse with practiced calm. When he saw how dangerously weak she was, how shallow her breathing had become, Something inside him hardened. He reached into the torn lining of his coat and pressed a discreet button on a small device hidden from sight. Within minutes, the sound of approaching engines cut through the street's chaos. Luxury vehicles arrived, sleek and unmistakably expensive, forcing the crowd into stunned silence. Paramedics rushed out, lifting Eleanor onto a stretcher, while Alexander stood up straighter than any beggar ever had. He climbed into the lead vehicle with her, his voice suddenly commanding, precise, and authoritative. The illusion shattered in seconds, leaving behind questions no one dared to ask. Eleanor woke in a private hospital room, sunlight filtering through soft white curtains. Machines hummed gently around her, and for a moment she thought she had died. A woman sat beside her bed, elegant, warm-eyed, and composed. Margaret Kingsley introduced herself softly, explaining that Eleanor was safe, her baby stable, and that the man who saved her would return soon. When Alexander entered, clean-shaven and dressed impeccably, Eleanor stared in disbelief. The beggar was gone. In his place stood a man of quiet power and kindness. He told her the truth without arrogance, who he was, why he lived undercover, and why he could not walk past her suffering. Eleanor cried, not from shock, but from relief she had not felt in years. Recovery was slow but thorough. Doctors monitored Eleanor closely, ensuring she and the baby survived the months of neglect and hunger. During long afternoons, Alexander visited, listening more than he spoke. Slowly, Eleanor shared her past, her parents, the rejection, the violence, the loneliness. He never interrupted, never pitted her, only acknowledged her strength. Margaret became a constant presence, teaching Eleanor how to eat properly again, how to rest without guilt. For the first time since childhood, Eleanor felt protected. When she was discharged, Alexander made a decision that would change all their lives. Eleanor would come home with them. The Kingsley estate was vast but warm, filled with laughter, art, and quiet dignity. Eleanor was given her own space, her own choices, her own time to heal. She was never treated as charity, only as family. In the final weeks of her pregnancy, Margaret stayed close, holding her hand through every fear and memory. Eleanor gave birth to a boy she named Lucas, honoring the family she lost and the life she nearly never lived. For a brief, radiant moment, happiness felt complete, but tragedy returned without warning. One morning, Lucas did not wake. Doctors tried everything, but fate was unmoved. Eleanor's screams echoed through the halls, grief tearing through her anew. The months that followed were heavy with mourning. Eleanor withdrew, blaming herself, drowning in silence. Alexander, carrying his own buried grief, understood her pain more than anyone. He guided her gently back to life, encouraging her to study again, to rebuild purpose from ashes. Eleanor returned to education with fierce determination, excelling beyond expectations. Engineering became her refuge, her way of honoring loss through creation. She graduated with distinction and joined Alexander's company, earning respect on merit alone. Success followed, but so did unwanted attention. Relatives who once abandoned her resurfaced, demanding recognition and wealth. When Eleanor refused, bitterness turned cruel. Soon after, she fell mysteriously ill, drained, weak, haunted by nightmares. Doctors found nothing. Alexander, sensing something darker, intervened decisively, surrounding her with protection, care, and unwavering belief until she recovered. Healing came slowly but fully. Life surprised Eleanor once more when she met Nathaniel Brooks, a fellow engineer with gentle humor and quiet depth. Their bond grew through shared work, long conversations, and mutual respect. Love came not as rescue, but as partnership. They married in a joyful ceremony, surrounded by chosen family. Years later, Eleanor held her second son, naming him Lucas again, not from grief, but from triumph. Standing on her balcony one evening, she looked out at the city that once nearly claimed her life. She had survived, transformed, and risen. Yet far away, resentment still stirred, reminding her that vigilance, like hope, must never sleep. That's all for today. Like, subscribe, and see you in the next episode. Stay tuned.